Garage below us is full, so there's going to probably be some people that are going to be trickling in, but we really want to start on time. My name is Robert Treston. I'm the director of the Anti-Defamation League for the New England region based in Boston. So thank you all for joining us today. You know, we come together today amidst many challenges in the community, with many groups being targeted, the Jewish community in particular, the Muslim community, and we just learned of an alleged Sikh hate crime on the West Coast. And so there are many reasons why we come together today, but I think one of the most important messages for us today is to support one another. And I think now, more than ever, we've been coming together for the Nation of Immigrants Seder. This is the 10th year, but there's an added urgency this year for us to come together. I want to give particular thanks to the ADL staff led by Norman Abbott, who probably everyone in this room has had some contact with. Norman has put his heart and soul into bringing us together today, so please just thank Norman and the ADL staff. I want to thank our sponsors, particularly Joanne and Paul Eggerman, and all of the ADL board members who support this event and have been doing so for many years. Quickly, some of our co-chairs: Mayor Walsh, Councilor Campbell, Cardinal O'Malley, Councilor Jackson, Councilor Zakim, Navjeet Singh, Kelly Luer, City Council President Michelle Wu, Ava Malona, Gladys Vega, Darnell Williams, and Israeli Consul General Yehuda Yaakov, all of whom have been meeting really at the ADL office for several months to help plan for today. So thank you for being here. You know, you may have seen at the beginning an opportunity to tell your immigration story in 4 words. I'm gonna try and do it in a couple of sentences. And I actually brought a few props. So my immigration story: I came to the United States. I'm actually not born in the United States. I came to the United States on September 5th, 1987. This is actually my passport when I arrived in the United States to go to school here. And those of you who are not American born may be familiar with some of these different categories. F1, I was an F1. I see some people acknowledging that. I was an H1B after that, a category that actually right now is in some ways under review, under attack. After that, I was a TN because I was born in Canada. TN is a special category for Canadians and Mexicans to travel freely in North America. That's another one that's under review, however you want to categorize it. I got my green card finally, and then in 2003, August 7th, 2003, I got this, which is a United States Certificate of Naturalization, which basically means that you're now a U.S. citizen. And so anyone who has ever been to Faneuil Hall for a citizenship ceremony, it's very special for those of us who become U.S. citizens and also your families. And one of the things that you get when you walk into Faneuil Hall and you sit down on the seat, it's a letter from the President of the United States. It's not a personal letter because it just says, "Dear fellow American," and it's sort of run off on a copy machine. And it doesn't even actually have a date on it. But George Bush was the president when I became a U.S. citizen. And there's one sentence in this particular letter that I think is extraordinarily relevant, and so I'm just going to read this sentence, and I think it's a good starting off point for today's Seder. Americans are united across the generations by grand and enduring ideals. The grandest of these ideals is an unfolding promise that everyone belongs, that everyone deserves a chance, and that no insignificant person was ever born. Our country has never been united by blood or birth or soil. We are bound by principles that move us beyond our backgrounds. And I think that's what's so special. And he goes on to basically say that the coming together from where we all come from actually makes us more American, not less American. So thank you all for being here today. It's great that ADL has been doing this for so many years, and we're really honored to share this Passover Seder and share our stories with you. It's now my pleasure to introduce our board chair, Harvey Walkoff.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name, as Robert Treston just said, is Harvey Walkoff, and I have the honor of being the regional board chair of the ADL. And speaking about honors, it's an honor to have all of you here today for what is actually just a wonderful celebration. So look at this group. It's really terrific that we could all come together. As Robert Treston mentioned, the title of this event today is A Nation of Immigrants. And there really couldn't be anything more topical than to have that kind of title today. Where does that title come from, though, A Nation of Immigrants? It comes from an essay that has that same name, and it was written by John F. Kennedy for the ADL all the way back in 1958. That was before he became President of the United States, while he was a United States Senator. And the theme of President then Senator Kennedy's essay was a reminder that we all are a nation of immigrants, and that we each bring our own family's history to everything that we do. This message obviously is just as relevant today, in fact, maybe even more relevant today as it was when President Jack Kennedy first wrote the essay to the ADL over 50 years ago. Now, I want to introduce somebody really special, Andrea Campbell. Andrea Campbell, let's have a round of applause for her. Andrea Campbell, she was elected to the Boston City Council in 2015. She represents District 4. Councilor Campbell was born and raised here in Boston, and she was educated in our schools, the Boston Public Schools. She went on to graduate from Princeton University and also the UCLA Law School. She then began her career at a nonprofit organization in Roxbury, where I believe she grew up. Prior to her election as a Boston City Councilor, she served as Deputy Legal Counselor for Governor Deval Patrick. Councilor Campbell is dedicated, among other things, to ensuring that every resident of her district has access to the same type of resources and opportunities that she herself had growing up here in Boston. Her primary focus as a councilwoman of Boston includes delivering constituent services, education, housing, and dealing with public safety issues. She lives in Mattapan with her husband, Matt, and she's co-chair of today's event. Councilwoman Andrea Campbell.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. First of all, I must say, everyone over here feels so far away. It's almost like I want to say, move up, move up. I want to thank Robert, I want to thank Harvey, I want to thank Norman, and I want to thank the ADL for the opportunity to address you today. I must say, when I found out I was speaking along with the mayor, I thought, oh, am I introducing him? They said, oh, no, someone else is doing that. You're speaking. So it really is an incredible honor to be here with you today. It's an incredible honor to be here with the mayor. It's an honor to be here with my colleagues, Councilor Zakem and Councilor Jackson, as well as all of you. And when I say I'm really happy to be here, I truly mean it, because usually on Sundays, I reserve it for praise and worship at my church, in time with my family, and that's it. So I'm really, really happy to be here with you guys today. I'm encouraged and inspired when I look around this room and I see some of my District 4 residents in the house. But I'm encouraged and inspired by the diversity of gender, of race, of age, but also of faith. Most of us in this room probably have our own places of worship that we regularly attend. But how often do we step out of these places of comfort and familiarity into places that are unfamiliar, places of different denominations, places of different religions entirely? As electeds, we get these opportunities often. In fact, just last week, I was at a Pentecostal church in Dorchester with the mayor praising at Grace Church. But for me, these opportunities are the most awesome and the most impactful. These are the places, these places of worship where we let our guards down, where we lead with our hearts, where we give thanks and praise, and where we offer our prayers not only for our families and ourselves, but also for our neighbors, our community, and our world. So whether I'm visiting a church, a synagogue, or a mosque in my district, I always leave uplifted, inspired, and motivated. But my stepping into unfamiliar territory did not start for me as an elected. Many in this room now know that I was born and raised in Boston, that I went to all Boston public schools, that I chair, if you don't know, I chair the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice for the Boston City Council, that I care deeply about the issue of criminal justice reform, especially thinking about my twin brother who passed away about 5 years ago after dying in the custody of the Department of Correction as a pretrial detainee at the age of 29. Many know that my story veered off in a very different direction than my twin brother. I instead went off to Princeton University and UCLA Law School. But what most don't know is that I started off as a math major at Princeton. But in my junior year, I changed it to sociology and Judaic studies. Growing up in Boston and having a father that was born in Roxbury in 1933 in Boston, I was fascinated by Black and Jewish relations in urban settings, not only in Boston, but also in New York. So changing my major would actually be one of the first times I would have the opportunity to step into unfamiliar and an uncomfortable territory. I knew, for example, that being the only Black, non-Jewish student in my Princeton Judaic Studies classes would be a challenge. But instead of feeling overwhelmed or discouraged in this unfamiliar space, and amongst a group of students by and large who came from the Jewish tradition, I knew I could bring a fresh perspective. And in the end, both I and the students benefited. But I say all this to emphasize that this is a critical moment in our history. It is imperative that we not only share our stories and experiences, but that we do so in spaces that are unfamiliar and uncomfortable, and vice versa, that we put ourselves in spaces that are uncomfortable in order to listen and truly listen to the experiences and stories of those who are different from us. Because this is the only way we will grow, and this is the only way we will continue to grow in our empathy and compassion. Today, as we all know, we're at a community Seder, a tradition where Jews were commanded to retell the story of the Exodus, of those that fled persecution out of Egypt. I never knew the true meaning of a Seder or the importance of Jewish tradition or ceremony until I took those Judaic studies classes. But because of that, there is a deeper understanding and an unwavering commitment to protect those traditions of a people I share no faith with. And while I'm deeply disturbed and saddened by the actions of the Trump administration, particularly on immigration, and the increase in hate crimes across this country, and the devastating atrocities that we are seeing committed against Muslims and Jews, I am not dismayed. In fact, my favorite Bible passage comes from the book of Joshua, and it says, "My Lord God is with me wherever I go. I shall not be fearful, I shall not be dismayed. Instead, I shall be strong and courageous." I know that when we get to know an immigrant family, and we really understand how hard they work and the sacrifices they make for their children, we could never say send them back so casually. I know that when we get to experience a service at a mosque, and when we bow down to pray with our brothers and sisters, we would never suggest or imply that those who seek Islam or Allah are terrorists. I often said during my campaign when I ran for Boston City Council that I believe the power to transform our communities, our city, and our country lies with us. It's not down at City Hall, it's not at the White House, it's not at the State House or in some remote place. That power instead is generated by the telling of our stories. And what we will find is that our individual stories have a lot in common. We've all experienced pain, suffering, joy, happiness, struggle, loss, even for a brief moment. So when you bring those stories together for good, can you imagine the power in that? I have an unwavering faith, not only based on the God I serve, but also inspired by those who came before me, including the Blacks and Jews that worked together in the city of Boston to ensure that all of us were guaranteed basic human rights in this nation. I said at the council, and I say often to my constituents, we must not be bullied by a Trump administration. And as a councilor in this awesome city, I promise to take bold steps that are both reactive and proactive, not merely to pass resolutions, but to support the promise of the Trust Act, to use the word sanctuary when describing Boston as a sanctuary city and not be fearful of losing federal funds. Because first and foremost, our people need to know that we stand with them, that we hear their stories, that we empathize with their experiences, and as an act of compassion, we will not back down. So thank you to the mayor for his incredible bold leadership. Thank you to Councilor Zachem and Jackson for their work even before I got to the council in passing the Trust Act. And thank you to all of you for the work that you have done and that you continue to do to support your neighbors, those who are different from you, and immigrants. Lastly, like I said, I'm honored to be here with you, but please consider me a partner in the work. Thank you for your time and really enjoy this precious ceremony today.
We're also delighted to have the mayor, Mayor Martin Walsh, here today with us to join our celebration. As everybody knows, Mayor Marty Walsh, he's a lifelong champion of working people, and he's a proud product of the city of Boston. He was sworn in as the city's 54th mayor in 2014. And Mayor Walsh is focused on strengthening Boston's public schools, continuing to lead Boston to the top of the global innovation economy, and also elevating the national conversation on what's become an extremely important issue, which is income inequality. Before taking office as our mayor, Mayor Walsh served with distinction in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. He focused there on job creation, worker rights, mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, K-12 education, and also broadly on civil rights. Mayor Walsh, apropos of today's theme, was born and raised in Dorchester by immigrant parents. And I think it's fair to say that he's driven to ensure that Boston is a city where anyone can overcome their own challenges and fulfill their personal dreams. Mayor Walsh lives in Dorchester, where he shares his life with his longtime partner, Lori Higgins, and he's also co-chair of today's event. It's an honor to introduce Mayor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Javi, and thank you, Robert, and everyone for being here today. As I was sitting listening to Councilor Campbell speak, I was thinking to myself, I do not want to follow her at this microphone. She did an incredible job today, so thank you, Councilor Campbell, and also what she failed to tell you is when she became chair of public safety, she was the first freshman city councilor ever to take that role, and generally, when you become a city councilor or state representative, you don't try to take the heavy issues right away. And she demanded that she take that issue on, and she's done an incredible job there, so I want to thank her as well. And I also want to thank the great work of City Councilor Josh Zakem and the great work of City Councilor Tito Jackson. You know, this is the time where we need to be together on certain issues, and certainly what's happening in the country, I think we can say for all of us, we are certainly together on this, and we're going to continue to be together on this as we move forward. So. Thank you. To everyone here today, welcome and shalom. I want to take this moment to express my gratitude to the Anti-Defamation League. The ADL has been fighting anti-Semitism and defending democratic ideals for more than a century. They do this through advocacy, through education, and legislation. You've made our country kinder, safer, and stronger. But right now, as we all know, it's a very crucial moment, and the ADL has never been more needed. Nationwide, immigrant rights are in danger, and it's something that we see every day. Something that I can't, when I get home at night in the middle of the day, I turn on CNN to get the real story, to see what happened the course of that day. And every day, it just seems like there's another piece of rhetoric out there. There's another attack. There's another insult, which means there's another fear in our schools. There's another fear in our communities. There's another uncertainty happening in our country. We are witnessing a frightening strike in anti-Semitic threats and attacks. And right now, the ADL is one of the strongest and clearest voices for justice in our city and certainly our country. In November, I joined the ADL at a nonpartisan rally at the State House. I think all the elected officials were here. And Tito was there, Josh was there, Andrea was there, I was there, along with our colleagues on both sides there. We had some Republicans there as well at the State House, the steps of the State House. Many of you were there. Together, we made it very clear that Massachusetts speaks out against hate. In a moment when many of us felt frustrated, confused, and scared, the ADL provided a way for us to channel our energy through action. That's what the ADL and the Jewish faith is all about. I want to thank you for your leadership over the last century, and on that day in November, and every day since then. Now, it might come to a surprise to some of you, but I'm not Jewish. I grew up in a Catholic household. I was educated by the Sisters of Charity. I have not come to know Judaism through the formal study, although in my studies in school, certainly we touched upon it. It's my understanding that Judaism has come from a meaningful conversation with real people. These conversations have been with my friends in the labor movement, with my neighbors, with my colleagues at the State House, with my colleagues in the City Council, and during a very powerful trip that we took to Israel. I know from the experience that foundation for understanding is simple. It's a conversation. When you start talking with people from different backgrounds or with different politics, you even get better at practicing empathy. As I said, I had not studied Judaism formally, but I know that Judaism in every generation is supposed to live as though themselves are leaving Egypt, escaping slavery, and seeking freedom. Passover is a time to reflect on the meaning of that journey. And this year, that meaning holds, I think, a special meaning. Nationally, immigrants and refugees' rights are being threatened. But in the city of Boston, when you think about Boston, we are a city that was built on immigrant contributions. Right now in our city, today, the people living in our city, 28% of Boston residents are immigrants. 48% of our children have at least one foreign-born parent, like myself, like many of you. In the city of Boston, we will not fall prey to ignorance or fear. We're going to continue to welcome and respect the members of our communities who are our immigrants. They will continue to be able to celebrate their diversity, and we as a city can celebrate that diversity together. And we will work harder than ever to preserve and protect people's civil rights. Over the past few months, many people have come up to me and people throughout our city and the Commonwealth and the country have said, how can we help? What can I do? Because people want to do something. Here's one thing that I say. Simply keep the conversations going. Because the conversations aren't only about the foundation of understanding, they're also an antidote to fear. The people in this room and all of you are boots on the ground, fighting for justice, for tolerance, human dignity every day. If that simply means hugging somebody that needs to be hugged, give them a hug. Tell them it'll be okay, because we will continue to work together and fight together. Many of you are getting some of this work done in courtrooms and in classrooms and in legislatures. I want to say, as mayor of the city of Boston, and I want to say on behalf of my colleagues from the city council here, we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for your work. I encourage all of you to continue your work, your conversations, and your passion for justice. I want to close by a quote from Rabbi Nachman. He was born in Poland in 1772 and traveled all over Europe. And he said, and I quote, "The exodus from Egypt occurs in every human being, in every era, in every year, and in every day." And that's what we have to remember in 2017. We are all immigrants. We are all seeking a better life. And we will get there if we share that journey with one another. Thank you and God bless.
So one of the great things about Boston, and at a time like this, is it occurs to me that we are very fortunate to be living where we are. We are fortunate that we are all in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We are all fortunate that we're in Boston. And one of the reasons is because of the leadership that we have here. And in Boston, it starts with Mayor Walsh. So thank you very much, Mayor Walsh. We're all going to be tested, in the coming days, weeks, and months. And it seems that every day, you get on the elevator, and by the time you get off your floor, something has changed. And so now is the time that we really need to all step it up, support one another, and advocate. So thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Matthew Soffer, who is going to lead us in today's Seder. He's the rabbi at Temple Israel in Boston, where he served since 2010, and his real focus has been on social justice work. Those of you who may know who know Temple Israel, it's the leading Reform congregation in Boston, and issues around social justice have been a part of the congregation for more than 100 years, really since its founding. Rabbi Soffer is very involved with GBIO, the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. He's also a musician and a composer, and we're going to get a sense of that level of his skill this afternoon. So, Rabbi Soffer. Happy to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Robert. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm actually not microphone. This is my natural volume. It's good. Let's start with a word on what a Seder is, and then we'll just begin. The word Seder means order, which is actually somewhat ironic because if you've ever been to a Seder before, it's anything but orderly. So it's more aspirational, but it's actually much more than that. A Seder, we call our prayer book. In Judaism, we call it a Siddur, an organized flow of our prayers. When one is officiating at a wedding, they're called a misader, one who is organizing or ordering something that's very sacred. So our Seder is our sacred telling. It is our opportunity to come together and tell our story. More people participate in a Seder than participate in any other Jewish holiday. When I ask that to people, they usually think that the answer is Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, or Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, but in fact it's Passover. And it's a tradition, an obligation for us to be welcoming people to our Seder table. And every year, we're not doing it right unless we have guests at our Seder table, which means that this Seder enables the minority of people in this room who are Jewish to fulfill this obligation of ours with such pride and such hope and such love. So that word Seder, it means a lot. The booklet that we all have here, we're going to move forward making no assumptions about what people know or don't know. Again, the majority of people in this room are from outside the Jewish community, which is what makes this particularly holy in my eyes. This blue book here is called our Haggadah. The word Haggadah means telling. It's our story. There actually is no word native to Hebrew for history. It's just historia in Hebrew. In Judaism and in Hebrew, the word we have is zikaron. It's memory. It's remembrance. So our history is our story. And when we remember it, we bring the past into the present and we affirm our obligations. And by having so many people from so many different traditions, I mean, just look at that map over there. There's even, and if you weren't able to catch it on the way in, catch it on the way out with dots on every place of your origin. There's even one that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which I have a question about for whoever put that there. I just want to hear the story, which is why we're all here, but we won't force you to do it now in front of everyone. I'll just start a quick story about why we tell stories, and then we'll dive right in. I remember hearing a story about an elderly gentleman in a nursing home, a retired music teacher, and he would sit alone in his room on the second floor, and he would hold a tuning fork in his hand, and every day one of his students from years prior would come in, would walk up to him and say, "What's the news?" And he would take his fork and he would hit it on the side of his chair, and that would be it. And the student would go home. Until one day, the student went up to his old teacher's room and he said, "What's happening? What's the news?" And he took out his fork and he hit it on the side of his chair. And he said, "Do you hear that? That's middle C. That was middle C yesterday. It's middle C today. 1,000 years from now, that will still be middle C." The tenor upstairs sings flat. The piano down the hall is out of tune. But that, my friend, that's middle C. When we tell the story that we're going to read from, and we're all going to read from it, this is our middle C. And it's not just our middle C. We share. It's other people's middle C too. And we're going to be hearing stories from people in this room, their middle Cs. And Elie Wiesel, of blessed memory, taught that people become the stories that they hear and the stories that they tell. So tonight, we're going to become one story together. We're going to open together on page 3 with a verse from Psalm 133. Repeat after me. Hine mato umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. And that just means, hine mato, how wonderful it is for us to be shevet achim, for us to be dwelling here together. We don't talk about, that's a very common tune in the Jewish community, so you'll hear about 40% of this room singing it, and the 60% will by the end of this song be singing it. What we don't often quote is the end of that song, which says, Hisham siva Adonai tavacha. For there, when people are dwelling together like that, siva Adonai, God is commanding or ordaining blessing. And it's the blessing of Chaim Adolah, of eternal life. That this is what it means to touch eternity. So we're going to sing this together, and then this half of the room is going to sing with me, while this half of the room sings with my friend Noam Israeli. That's it. Here's part 2. That's it. Together. Here's where we'll split up. We'll start together, and then this half is going to continue singing that first part with Noam, and this half is going to sing with me. We'll move on to part 2. Stick with that. How beautiful it is for us to be together. I'd like to now invite Joanne and Paul Eggerman, our Seder sponsors, and ADL regional board members to lead us in the blessing over wine, which we find on page 5. And we can all lift up, you can pour grape juice into your glasses right now, into your small glasses. And we'll give everybody a minute to do so. What says Kedem on it, that's grape juice. And what says Manischewitz on it is the sorry excuse for wine that we love in the church community.
Here's wine. Anybody want wine?
Okay. And we lift up our fruit of the vine, which is in recognition of all of the joy and the fruit of life. Let's do this blessing together, followed by Shechianu, which is our blessing for appreciation. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
So please join me in the Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shechianu, V'tinanu, V'yulianu, V'aman Arzeh.
Amen.
Blessed are you, eternal God, ruler of the universe. You have given us life. You have kept us alive that we may live to this day.
Amen. We're going to go through this Seder and we're going to have a bunch of different symbols. And every symbol recalls something from the experience of the Exodus. Our first symbol is on page 6. In Hebrew it's karpas, eating of the green vegetables, so everyone can take a piece of the parsley. It's a symbol of spring, and there should be salt water. There's a bowl with water, that's salt water on your table, so everyone can take some. And we dip it in salt water, which is a symbol of tears, and we hold those two things together. The emergence of spring, of newness, but the memory of tears. And we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adamah. And let's read together. We praise you, O God, sovereign of the world, who creates the produce of the earth. May it brighten our hope for a world where bondage and hunger, homelessness and strife are but dim memories. And now you eat the delicious parsley. It's a very good year for parsley. It's amazing. It's really good. Yeah. On the top of page 7, we see the yachats, breaking of the middle matzah. You'll see a stack of matzah. Lots of matzah on the place. Matzah placed in the yard is placed in the a stack. Take the one from the middle. Don't break it yet. Oh, you already broke it. It's okay. It's okay. But when you break it, put it by your ear so you can hear the sound. Matzah is the bread of poverty. We break the middle piece of matzah to remind us that when we were poor slaves, a whole loaf of bread is an unheard, it's a luxury. We imagine the Israelites running out of Egypt with not enough time for the bread to rise. And so we recognize poverty and we break this matzah. And at this point, let's read together. Let us be ever mindful that as we work toward our own self-betterment, we remember and aid those who still have far less than we. Look us add to the broken loaf, and brings us up to alleviate poverty everywhere. The leader now uncovers the matzot, breaks the middle one if you haven't already, leaving one half, which we call the afikomen, which is Greek for dessert, which is quite a dessert on the plate. And it's my pleasure now to call upon Boston City Councilor Tito Jackson.
This is the bread of affliction which Israel ate in the land of Egypt. It is a symbol of days of slavery and pain endured by the Jewish people for centuries. It is a symbol also of the slavery and pain of so many in the world today. It is our hope that next year we will be free, that next year humankind will be free of all oppression.
Amen. And now Dick Glowski.
May the children open the door to welcome the hungry of body and spirit. Let all who hunger for bread and freedom come to partake, to celebrate the bread and freedom of this Passover celebration.
On page 8, we move into Magid. Magid comes from the same root of Haggadah, which just means the telling, the story. And we remember what Elie Wiesel taught us, that we become the stories that we hear, the stories that we tell. And throughout this Seder, we have a number of stories. As Rabbi Mayor Walsh taught us, in every generation, the human being is obliged to see oneself as having come out of Egypt, each in our own ways. As Rabbi Art Green says, everyone has to see themselves as having come out of Egypt, having still needing to come out of Egypt, and usually it's both. So we'll now hear our first story of immigration from Anita Adams.
Bienvenidos. Hi, everyone. Hello. Shalom. I'm very honored to be here today, and my name is Anita Adams, or Ana. As a little girl growing up in Havana, Cuba, I loved the weekends that I spent with my grandparents at their hacienda in Calimete. It was a small farming community, so feeding the chickens and collecting eggs was very exciting. My grandmother, Jehevet Eisenberg, cooked extravagant multicultural Jewish Cuban meals in an unassuming farming kitchen. When Passover arrived, flan, or caramel custard, was served for dessert. But first was a tasty bistec de palomilla, thin filet mignon with cebollitas, chopped onions, or even a Cuban-style brisket, fragrantly cooked for hours with tomatoes, onions, vegetables, bay leaves, and sherry cooking wine. Potato latkes and kugel would accompany picadillo, a peasant-inspired meat dish with olives and raisins. Of course, all meals were served with plátanos maduros, or fried plantains. Yes, we like food, very much. The symbolic Seder plate laid neatly in the middle of our simple wood kitchen table. Born in Poland, my grandmother immigrated to Cuba with her 4 sisters in the 1920s. They left during the time of many pogroms. Later, most of her family perished in concentration camps. 2 of her little brothers escaped through the Russian forests and arrived safely in Israel. She learned to speak Spanish after arriving in Cuba, but continued conversations in Yiddish with her family. My mother, born in Havana, mostly spoke Yiddish with my grandmother. It was actually my mother's first language in Havana, Cuba. And while in Cuba, we were all known as Polacos. The Passover Haggadah was in Spanish and in English. Traditional Passover dishes were always partnered by something Cuban. The afikomen was hidden, and all the kids benefited from its discovery. The adventure was as lush as the reward. Our dinner conversations were mainly in Spanish. Discussions regarding Fidel Castro were very controversial. After all, my family left Cuba in 1961 amidst the Cuban Missile Crisis. Our home, most of our belongings, and our sense of patriotism were all stripped from us. I lived in Havana until I was 8 years old. Unfortunately, we Cuban Jews, Jubans, as they call us, were a tight-knit group. We lived walking distance to my Jewish day school, and our family was a member of the local conservative temple in Havana, Cuba, called El Patronato. Our Eastern European heritage blended smoothly with the island's Spanish essence. I had never heard of discrimination or anti-Semitism in Cuba. Many of the Eastern European Jews who came to the island were accepted as new merchants who set up small shops in Old Havana. These stores sold fabrics, clothing, jewelry, cigars, and shoes. Many Jewish newcomers settled into a very comfortable life on the island. The climate, the friendly Cuban people, the tropical foods, the beautiful beaches surrounding us were to their liking. Can you blame them? After leaving Cuba, we resettled briefly in Miami Beach, Florida. Many Ashkenazi, or Eastern European, and Sephardim, Spanish Middle Eastern Jews, left Havana with the hopes of returning after Fidel Castro took power. Unfortunately, after a few months, the dream of returning to our homeland was exactly that, just a dream. Communism took hold of the island, and businesses and families lost everything. My own family suffered the same fate. More than 20,000 Eastern European Jews left Cuba around 1961. We arrived on the shores of Miami Beach as political refugees. Most of us did not receive a warm welcome or much assistance from the U.S. government or Jewish agencies. Somehow, within our own cluster, we formed a círculo of a Cuban Jewish community. The children went to local public schools, and everyone helped everyone. We were always grouped together in these new American schools. I had learned a bit of English at my old Cuban Jewish day school, so I had the blessing and the curse of understanding most of what I heard in my new country. In time, my mother and grandparents learned English by watching television or listening to the radio. However, Spanish was the only language we spoke at home. My father found work through his previous connections to the U.S. clothing industry. He found work at a manufacturing plant in Columbia, Tennessee. So we moved again. We were off to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where we could rent a home with my grandparents. And in Murfreesboro, I entered 4th grade in a school with my brother. We would walk home from school being mocked and called political refugees and told to go home. It was a politically controversial time in the United States as President John F. Kennedy was dealing with Cuban-stationed armed Russian missiles facing the U.S. I will never forget the feeling of being different and hated for it. My mother would get phone calls to remove my pierced earrings. In the Cuban tradition, when a little girl is born, the doctor pierces her ears. Yet another example of how Jews assimilated into the Cuban culture. And in Tennessee, this was simply not acceptable. To this day, I look back and wonder how immigrants of today assimilate to their new homes, how they try to belong, but still carry their existing language, their culture, their history, and their traditions. Many immigrant friends were told to forget their native language. You're in America now. You must learn English, I was often told. My parents made us speak Spanish at home, constantly took us to our Cuban Jewish families in Miami, and never stopped reminding us of our roots. The Cuban Jewish community in Miami is still a very tight-knit group. Life there has become a replica of our life in Cuba. I have family that owns a Cuban restaurant in Miami Beach called Sazon. It's their way to keep the cultural connection alive and maintain bonds with the family who often pop in there for a cafecito or a warm Cuban meal. Many have rebuilt their businesses or successfully pursued new professions. They stay involved politically and are very devoted to Israel. Some of the Orthodox Cuban Jewish groups have become even more conservative over the years. We were always taught to remember where we came from and to embrace our Cuban Jewish origins. My journey, now many years in the making, will forever be beautiful and important to me. I only hope my family and others appreciate and treasure being different, and that they never allow their differences to be wrongly ridiculed rather than rightly valued. May we all remember our roots and let them be the true reason why we grow. Thank you for having me.
Page Avadim hayinu, we were slaves. Ata b'nei chorim, but now we are free. Much of the Seder is devoted to enabling us to cultivate that kind of attitude of gratitude. We know that we're not all free, but we sing about this aspect of our journey. So we'll be singing it. If you know it, sing along. If you don't, you will after about the 14th repetition. Avadim hayinu, hayinu, ata b'nei chorim, b'nei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorim, b'nei chorim. Avadim hayinu, hayinu, ata b'nei chorim, b'nei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorim. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nei chorim, b'nei chorim. We'll now turn to page 11 for the famous part of our Haggadah known as the 4 questions. And we're going to do these 4 questions in a special way. On page 11, we have 4 questions in many languages. I want to invite, we're not going to dive into the 4 questions and chant the 4 questions until we first hear the question number 1 in as many languages as we possibly can have it said. So I want to invite, if you're one of the readers here, I want to invite you forward to stand here, and we'll go in order. Please say your name, your language, and then the first question. So let's see how many, and then afterwards, if you know a language that was not represented, you're not allowed to be shy. Okay.
I'll be speaking in Punjabi. ए रात और राता तो फर्क क्यों है?
We'll be speaking in Somali. Oh, ow, we're doing have it. We're doing have another call.
Antoine Julio Mendes speaking in Asian Creole. Kukisa Litsa Pakakulochi.
Rachel Goldberg, I'll be speaking in Hebrew. Mami Shana Halela Hazamiko Halel.
Diego Portillo en Spanish. ¿Por qué es esta noche diferente a todas las otras noches?
Robert, I'm speaking in French. Pourquoi cette nuit se distingue de toutes les autres nuits?
I am Cash. I'm going to speak in Urdu, which is the national language of Pakistan. Ye raat baki raaton se mukhtalif kyun?
I'm Natalie, I'm going to speak in Portuguese. Porque esta noite é diferente de todas as outras noites?
What other languages do we have in the room? All right. I see 2 hands. Keep your hand high so we know where we're going. And introduce yourself too.
I'm Akibo Deluafemi from Nigeria. Kilo de ti ale yi yàtọ̀ sí gbogbo alẹ́.
Isabel Gusев, originally from Kyiv, Ukraine, but my native language is Russian. Чем отличается эта ночь от всех других ночей?
Hello everyone from China, and I will say it in Chinese Mandarin. It is 为什么这个夜晚与其他夜晚不同 Although the things here are not correct.
is Hazel. I'm going to be saying this in Tagalog, which is the language of the Philippines. Bakit diferente itong gabi sa ibang mga gabi?
Bene Talena. Che differenza c'è fra questa e tutte le altre note?
Hi. I know just enough Japanese to read this phonetically, so I'll try. Forgive me if I mispronounce the word too. Konya wa hokano toru to ayo shigai masuka.
Hi everyone, this is Bobby Ramakant from India and I will be speaking in Hindi. ये रात दूसरी रातों से क्यों अलग है?
I'll do the Yiddish one.
Someone over there?
Hi, my name is Faye, and I can do it in American Sign Language.
My name is Phyllis. I know enough Yiddish to do this a little bit more phonetically. Viozi is die Nacht von Pesach anders von alle Nacht von a ganz Jahr.
My name is JP and I'm going to speak in a regional language in India called Malayalam. Ee Ratri Madhyaratri Katlu Vityasam Endumundu.
Anyone else? All right.
My name is Jennifer. I'll volunteer the Latin while I'm rusty. Homo rec, rem hic vesper, omnibus, aliis, vesperibus, dissimus est. Thanks.
My name is Mars and I'll speak in Danish, which is from Denmark. For at the hand that fiscally as from the
I'm Jill, I can read the German. Was macht diese Nacht anders als alles andere Nachten?
That's it? Okay, so I want to invite up all the kids. Thank you guys. Let's give everyone just a round of applause. All the kids come on up and you're gonna lead us in the chanting of the 4 questions. And if having a parent with you helps, then you can drag them along. All right. Great, so we'll stand right here. That's great. All right. Kids. Great. I feel like it's that scene in Wizard of Oz where they're all coming out. All right. Yeah, don't be shy. Okay, you ready? We'll all do this together. And we're on page 10. We have all the kids? Yeah, there we go. I was waiting for you guys. Good. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Amen.